entrepreneur, you may oftentimes feel alone because there's a lot of people that just don't get you. But you may have the strong desire and passion to just help make this planet a better place. So you keep pushing forward and you make it happen. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics show that approximately 20% of new businesses fail during the first 2 years of opening, 45% during the first 5 years fail, and 65% during the first 10 years. And only 25% of new businesses make it to 15 years or more. So, with those kind of odds, why do people still enjoy becoming an entrepreneur? Today, you're going to meet a fearless entrepreneur, Alice Pallum. Stay with us for more on her story.
You have a story that is unique, a story that needs to be heard, a story that people care about. So it can get them to stand up for what they believe in. It can inspire them to change. It can inspire them to take action. It can inspire them to care. Care enough to be the light to someone's darkness. Care enough to extend a helping hand to someone who's down and out. Care enough to call things the way they are and see them for what they could be. Your story can make a difference. Your story can save a life. Your story matters. One story changed the entire world. Your story could do the same. All you've got to do is own your story.
If you're just joining us, welcome to Books with Bridgetti. I'm your host, Bridgetti Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa, and our stream is made possible by StreamYard and BeLive Media, helping make meaningful connections. A special warm welcome to you, our viewers. This is an audience-centric show, so we'd love to hear your comments, your questions, and if you've never watched the show before, please let me know that you are new, and we would love to give you a shout-out. Our special guest today is Alice Pallum. Alice is the founder and CEO of AMP Enterprises. After 17 years of corporate America, she wanted to create her own journey. She has a passion for helping business owners overcome hurdles to achieve their goals, and she's had plenty of hurdles herself. She's strategic, she's an achiever, a relator, and an individualized instructor who achieves her goals by harnessing her corporate experience. And the book that we're focusing on is called The Fearless Entrepreneurs. And she is fearless by no means because she had a stroke and that has still fueled her to remain and have that entrepreneurial spirit. Let's not waste any more time and welcome her to the show. Alice, welcome to the show. I'm so pleased that you were able to join me today. People who've had a stroke go through a crazy experience. I don't need to tell you all about it. So I'm so very thrilled that even despite having that kind of challenge, you haven't lost the ability to thrive, not just yourself, but to also want to help other people thrive in business. Shall we just go back a little bit and tell us what happened? What happened when you had the stroke? How did it affect you? How did it affect your business?
Thank you. And thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today. I appreciate that. So in 2012, I had a stroke. I woke up one morning and had very bad double vision and a pounding headache and wondered what that was about. And as the pounding headache didn't go away, I called a friend of mine and said, as the double vision didn't go away, I called a friend of mine and said, hey, I've had double vision now for like 3 hours. I'm a little concerned. He said, I'm going to come pick you up. Took me to the clinic, who then sent me to the hospital. They determined I'd had a stroke overnight, and that's why I woke up with the double vision and the headache. So the good news is it was not severe enough that I wouldn't wake up, right? And then I had a major stroke after I got to the hospital. So the good news was I was already in a hospital
You
for the
had
bad part.
so you had 2 strokes, like in quick succession.
Right. But probably
Wow.
like 8 or 9 hours apart, but yeah.
And what did that leave you with?
As far as what kind of the after effects still are right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
I have some vision challenges. I have some balance challenges. Sometimes my balance is off, just like all of a sudden. Memory, every once in a while, I can't remember a word. You know it, but you can't find it. Some things like that. Couple probably, well, one, I'm missing 10 days after the stroke happened because I remember being at a hospital near my house, and then I woke up. What I found out was 10 days later that I was kind of conscious of where I was.
Wow.
And what I missed was actually moving to a different hospital, being in intensive care, because when I kind of was aware of my surroundings, I was in a regular hospital room, but still in the hospital. So that was, I would say, interesting to me because at first I was kind of freaked out about missing 10 days. And then as I realized what probably happened during those 10 days, I'm okay not remembering, then it was better.
What you don't remember doesn't bother you. I had to laugh. I was chatting to somebody the other day, and they were saying, you don't remember stuff that happened to you, in utero, and you don't remember stuff when you were a baby or a small child. But does it really bother you? Not really. You don't fret over those things. So why fret over something that you absolutely have no control over? Rather focus on what you can control. And I think it's just a mindset of being grateful and thankful for what you do have, and not to focus so much on what you don't have. If you had to compare your life as an entrepreneur prior to your stroke and post-stroke, what would you say are some of the significant differences for you?
That is an interesting question. I would say one is, to your point, I'm grateful for where I am. When I sometimes get frustrated with some vision things or some other things, I remind myself that it could have been so much worse. I could not even be here. So it is that kind of being grateful for what you have and not dwelling on the what's not there. I would say I'm more fearless because I know I've gone through so much. Now when I have some challenges, it's like, I beat this other stuff. This is just me a walk in the park. Or at least maybe not devastating, maybe not a walk in the park, but not as bad as what I've already been through. So it kind of gives me a little bit more of that fearless going forward step. And I'd say those are you're the first person to ask me that question. It's a great question. I think those are the key things I would say.
So let's just start from the beginning. How did you, the book, The Fearless Entrepreneurs, was masterminded by Linda Sunshine West, and she's a phenomenal entrepreneur herself, a late budding entrepreneur like most of us. And she stepped out of her comfort zone herself. And just to give context to anybody who doesn't know Linda Sunshine West, she started her entrepreneurial journey at the age of 51. And she started this journey by writing down her fears for an entire year. Every day she conquered one fear. And so, the series of books that she's been able to release, I think she's a 9 times best-selling author at the moment, or something like that, something crazy. She's become a serial publisher and a love for doing collaboration books. How did you meet Linda, by the way?
Lois Kofi, who's also in this book, is the one that introduced me to Linda.
Right. And, she just has a way of convincing people to become, or she attracts people to her just by her nature, and it's amazing. And she's literally having one collaboration book after another. But being entrepreneurial and being a fearless entrepreneur so is a fitting conversation to have right now for the times that we live in, because we live under challenging circumstances, more so than ever before. And a lot of us are challenged. People have lost their jobs, and people are looking for ways in which to pivot, and a lot of people have done so very, very successfully. What are some of the challenges that you found that you had to overcome in order to become a fearless entrepreneur?
Well, first, of course, was during the recovery from my stroke, was that there was a period of time where I wasn't thinking clearly. I knew I wasn't thinking the way I used to, but I didn't know how long it was going to last, how to fix it, what do you do about it? And I was concerned that I would stay that way, that I would not be able to think the way I do again today. And then my second one was driving, because I live out in the country. I didn't want to have to move to the city where there'd be public transportation. So, because the double vision was an issue with the driving. So I would say that, going through that thought process, it was still that drive to be able to be independent. I spent 17 years in corporate America, loved my job for most of those 17 years. But bureaucracy and things as the company got bigger became not as much fun. So I definitely really wanted to be able to work for myself and be in charge of that journey. So that kind of helped drive me through the different kinds of therapy, the learning to read, again, writing, all the fine motor skills are things that are often affected by a stroke. Pronouncing, words. I still slur every once in a while and am not quite as, see, that has a word I can't remember. There you go. Thank you. So I had to get used to that because I speak. That's one thing I did before the stroke and still do. But that was really, those first couple of times of standing up and speaking in a crowd was nerve-wracking. And one thing that helped is I had close friends that were with me that day that were in the audience. So I had one, I knew they would tell me the truth afterwards. How did it look? How did I do? They wouldn't just say, oh, it was great. It was great. They would tell me exactly what it really was. And it was having that friendly face in the crowd to know, okay, I'm all right. Keep going. One of the things I still have is a peripheral vision cut. I do this because I don't see my hand except on the screen right now. I don't see it out of the corner of my eye. So speaking, that was one thing I had to start working on, was always looking. If somebody had a hand up in the right-hand corner, I wouldn't see them if I hadn't turned my head a little bit. And I got more comfortable just telling people when I was teaching classes and so forth that I've got a peripheral vision cut. So if I don't see you raising your hand, feel free to say something to get my attention, because I'm just not seeing you. But that was, again, just hard to start saying out loud. And then the more you did it, the easier it got.
Amazing. And I think it's also, making peace with your changed circumstances and not trying to worry too much about what's not in your control, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like your vision, for example, it's not something that you can turn on and off or control. And so you just find ways of living around it.
Yeah, exactly.
And not allowing things like that to become a roadblock, but instead a bump in the road that you're going to go over or around, but it's not going to stop you from doing what you want to do. And that's very important, that kind of resilience. Where did you, what would you say has attributed to your resilience? Because you need a lot of that to be a fearless entrepreneur.
Another great question. It's like, these are things I haven't thought of. Well, I think part of it's probably just a drive I have naturally. I was raised by a great mother who was very independent as well. So I always kind of had that be on your own, be not need to rely on other things and other people. And again, some of that Very happy for most of my 17 years in corporate America, but once I hit that roadblock of the bureaucracy was just not worth the time and the energy, and made that decision, I always want to be on my own. That kind of just kept me going, that if I can't get this business back up and running, I'm going to have to work for somebody else, which just is not my nature anymore at all. I'm much better about figuring out my own journey and not taking a direction from others.
I like that. I like that. What do you love most about being an entrepreneur? Like, what gets you out of bed and want to do what you do?
I love challenge. I get bored easily, so I always want to have new things to work on. And that's one thing I like about being a coach and consultant, because I work with different business owners in tons of different industries, lots of different things going on. So I'm always have variety and encounter those new challenges when I work with a business that I've not done before. Like I worked with the owner, husband and wife, actually owners of a prepaid cellular company. That was the first time I'd worked with that industry.
Wow.
So loved learning all the new stuff. In my strength finders, learner is in my top 5. I do love learning, so that it feeds that passion as well, to learn new things with new people. And case in point, though, with that couple, husband and wife, I love working with people and have a skill set that people tell me I have to work with things like husband and wife trying to work together in the same business and make sure that both relationships stay intact, as it were.
Ooh, that's a very hot topic. There's very few people that get it right. My husband and I have worked together. We've been married for 30 years this year, and
Congrats.
that's how long we've shared the same working space. I don't know anything else, and it's never been a big deal for us to to be in each other's space all day. But I know a lot of couples have said, I could never do it. I have got to go to work and do my own thing. But that's one of the interesting things that's happened over the pandemic, is that a lot of people who were in corporate for a very long time suddenly realized, but they do enjoy being home with their families more, having a bit more control over their time, being able to spend more time with their partners, with their children. So there's been a lot of negativity around the pandemic, but also a lot of good stuff have come out of it. And I think resilience is one of them. that's come out of the pandemic, because it really has tested a lot of us to the hilt,
Yes.
in more ways than one. And I think a lot of people have even, I don't know from your experience with speaking with your clients, but a lot of people who've never considered an entrepreneurial journey before have now changed their thinking. Albeit if they were forced to change their thinking, but they are more open to entrepreneurial endeavors than they were before. Have you found that?
I would say I've been finding that most of my clients are entrepreneurs to begin with, but from what I've been observing from other people and more people being new to doing it, I would agree with that.
Yeah. And so what kind of clients do you find yourself working with mostly, and what is it that you do for your clients?
A couple things. So the clients I tend to find myself working with often are partnerships, whether not necessarily only married couples, but partners who often went into business together because they worked well together someplace else. And they start a business 50-50 partners. And then as they were coming to challenges, sometimes they can't make those decisions because they're 50-50 partners now, right? Nobody has a little bit more oomph, as it were, to finally make the decision. And I often talk about, let me be the bad guy. Bring me in. I will ask the hard questions. I will talk about, just because we've done that for the last 5 years doesn't mean we should still keep doing it. And be the one to ask the hard questions. You guys keep that relationship then. Because I brought all the controversy and disruption to the conversation. So that's been a theme for quite a while. I noticed, speaking about the pandemic, most of my clients were in the trades. Like I'd say 75% of my clients were in the trades. Construction company, flooring company, that type of industry. During the pandemic, not exactly why. I think maybe because those industries got so busy. If they had challenges, they just were kind of obscured by the fact that there was so much business coming in. Now, right now, most of my clients are realtors, mortgage agents, financial advisors, that kind of industry. So for all of those, however, some of the key things I do is real planning. So let's set some real goals and have a real plan step by step. What are we going to do? What are the due dates? What are the resources? How are we going to stay on track and stay accountable to that? And I love helping business owners who've never had that kind of experience before. I worked at a painting company that had never had that kind of experience to actually do a plan, and they had a whole house to do. And I walked them through how we did the project management for it, of what tasks can be done in the whole house, what has to be done room by room. And we also talked about what are the kids' schedules, because they had a blended family and they had kids that had to go back to other parents, or what's the school schedule. And they were so impressed that I cared about that. I'm like, well, that's a key part of your life, right? You can't just cut off your personal stuff and your family stuff and only talk about this house. So on the schedule, it was this weekend we have kids, so this can't be a contingency time. This weekend we have no kids, so if stuff runs over during the week, we can work on this Saturday and Sunday. And then they learned how to do that project planning for themselves and could go off and do it after that one. So it's that kind of thing. And then being able to look at the big picture of where are the pain points, where are the roadblocks, and how can we address those. And I have a great network of other coaches and consultants and specialists that if there's something that is one of those roadblocks or pain points I don't fix myself, I've got a great set of people I can refer them to and make sure that they get taken care of as well as I would have taken care of them.
So let's talk a little bit about, having had a stroke. It's a very common affliction. People may not talk about it often, but I've connected with it with a network of people. In fact, there's one colleague of mine in the live streaming world who runs a talk show, and he all he does is interviews people who've had a stroke. And it covers a wide spectrum of people from all walks of life. So you had the stroke. How did you keep your business running? Did you take a break from the business? How long were you away from the business? How hard was it to pick up from where you left off, post-stroke? Can you just talk us a little bit through that process? Because I think that's very useful to anyone who possibly is in your shoes now, where they've had a stroke and they're looking at what could I do moving forward, and how difficult is it going to be for me to return back to work? Could you maybe just talk us through your process a little?
Sure, absolutely. So I did have to take time off because my recovery wasn't guaranteed. But they were not sure how well I would recover. In addition to starting out with, so I woke up with a double vision and the bad headache, went to the hospital. Somewhere in there, I had the major stroke probably 5 or 6 hours later, already at a hospital. At that point in time, I don't remember what happened after that. For about 10 days. Later, I learned it had actually been 10 days I didn't remember. So I went from the hospital, intensive care, into a regular hospital room, and that's when I started kind of understanding what was going on. So during that time, my network was talking to each other to know what had happened to me, but I wasn't communicating with my clients or anybody else at all. I had aphasia, which is where, you don't understand what's going on around you. My sister-in-law later told me my brother could be like right in front of my face, and I didn't respond at all. I was only responding to pain. So, of course, during this time, I can't tell anybody what's going on because I don't even know what's going on. Went from the hospital to a nursing home. An interesting experience when you're 30 years younger than everybody else at the nursing home. And that was where I did little physical therapy, but mostly occupational. Reading, writing, understanding direction. From the aspect of they would take me to a different part of the building and say, can you find your way back? And I tell you, something was really scary at first when you can't find your way back. You know, like how can I function if I can't figure this out? So when I was done with that therapy, I still had double vision. They wanted the double vision to correct itself as much as possible naturally. I couldn't go home alone. I lived alone at the time, couldn't go home. My brother and his family, right off the bat, no question, of course you're coming to our house. So I spent 9 months at my brother's house, finishing the recovery, getting the vision as far as it would go. I actually have prisms in my prescription glasses for reading and driving because there's still enough double vision that if you look down the road, you see two of things sometimes and fun stuff like that. Gets worse the more tired I get. So that's where that part of the vision ended up. But fantastic support from my family. My sister-in-law and I at one point early on had decided we would have been good friends if we'd met anyway, not just because she was dating my brother, but met somewhere else anyway, which helped with that whole just come to our house and hang out for 9 months thing, right? My niece and nephew were young. We had fun with that, got to see a lot of them during that phase. But as that process was going on, I had a great group of colleagues. For those of you that might be familiar with BNI, Business Network International, I've now been a member for 15 years. So by then I was probably a member for 8 or 9 and a director, and had a great group of colleagues who were there to be supportive. So like the first time I was going to speak in public and do a presentation, I had people there that I could count on to do 2 things for me. One, be a friendly room in the face, but more importantly for me, tell me the truth about how I did. They wouldn't just say, oh, great, great, great. You did a great job, which you often get from people that you don't know very well sometimes, but they sat down and told me what they noticed and also told me people that don't know you won't notice this. They've not seen you present before. You know, I notice it, we notice it because we've seen you present a ton of times and understand how you function.
Right.
So that support was phenomenal. And also the executive director of our region of BNI gave me some things to start doing as well before I was ready to stand up and teach a class, because I taught a 3-hour class for that group, but gave me smaller things to do to start, one, build my confidence up that I could do stuff, help me understand how to deal with some peripheral vision challenge. Because even learning to use a computer again, I had to learn that
Right.
to look to the right. If I wasn't seeing something, getting frustrated about where is that, it's just farther to the right. Because like right now, I don't see the right side of my computer screen without turning my head. So it's really having support that helps you keep going, having kind of that drive to want to continue to be independent. Because of course, as much as I love living at my brother's house, I would like to live in my own house again, right?
Sure.
And not have to get, in my opinion, a job where versus having my own business and being in charge of what I was going to do.
And how did your clients respond to your absence? Because that was a lot, 9 months. 9 months is a very long time to be away from your business, So how long did it take you to kind of bounce back into being able to generate an income again, given that you had this 9 month break?
I'm just thinking back. I would say it was probably a year before I was back to the income level I had been at. I was able to start generating a little bit here and there. I had some clients who, of course, needed some services, so they had gone elsewhere while I was recovering. I had other clients that were just waiting to, were working with somebody else, but just waiting till I could come back and work with them again. And then just building new people from new experiences. And you were kind of talking about sometimes there were some positive things about the pandemic, like people that had been working from home, spending more time with their family. This is one of the things that has been good for me. I was using video conferencing for clients before the pandemic, but also have people like, I don't want to do it that way. If you're too far away from me, I'll find somebody else. Now it's so much more natural. People seldom say that to me anymore. They are fine being on video. So I now have clients across the country, and it'll expand that way, and do workshops and seminars and cool interviews like this to meet more people and build an audience farther away than just my state.
Well, that to me was one of the fantastic unintended consequences of COVID, is that you can now do business wherever there's internet. You know, you're no longer limited to just one locality, region, country. You can do business anywhere in the world you like if people have got internet access, because people have now been trained that, you know, doing things online is okay, and people have become more comfortable with it, you know, sort of like we're almost 2 years down the line. So people are used to interacting online. And so they, as you said, people are not concerned about it any longer, or not averse to the idea of doing business on camera. You know, people are a lot more comfortable about that. And so what would you say, how has having had the experience of the stroke changed you as a person and how you do business?
How has it changed me as a person? I would say I was always a fairly patient person, but it's given me an even bigger amount of patience for myself and others, because it takes me longer to do some things still today. Reading for me is very hard and slow. So I just had to learn to have the patience for that and accept it, not do something else, because what else can you do except reading? I did try audiobooks often, especially during my recovery, but that I don't have the patience for. If the person reading doesn't read the way I would read it, it bothers me too much to listen. So I'll just work my way through the book. Plus, with business stuff, I like to read and make notes, right, on the book and stuff. So that's harder to do in an audio. And then, of course, be very accepting of other people and the things that might slow them up or cause them to struggle a little bit. From a business perspective, it helped me because people learn that about me, and they believe I'll be able to do stuff like that. Like, I can understand their struggle if I've done this. And the fact I've accomplished this, gotten through this, I can probably help them go through whatever they're dealing with as well. So it's kind of giving me a little more street cred, as it were, about problem solving, because they see what I've done. Which is interesting also because it wasn't something I talked about a lot in the beginning. But people that I knew, but if there wasn't a reason for me to say anything about it, people didn't know. And for a long time, people were trying to encourage me to write a book, and I was just like, I can't do it, cannot do it. Which is one thing, back to your point about Linda. When Linda spoke to me, she helped me be okay with sharing all of that stuff. Because in my chapter, I talk about the struggle of, I'm not thinking, will I ever think again, you know, which was hard to talk about publicly, especially the closer it was to that. But this book has been a great experience for me as far as digging in, going back in time to think about, how did I feel when I first woke up? How did I feel about all the things that were transpiring, and put myself back there, which helped me be, again, so grateful for where I am now, kind of reminding myself of where I was and where I've come.
I think that's a good way to look at, you know, doing something like this, writing down your story in a book and making it public. It's also a way of celebrating your wins, because like you said, you realize, wow, that was me then, but this is me now. Look how far I've come. So you no longer remain stuck in any feelings of self-pity or things that you've lost. But I think it gives you a way of shifting your focus into what have you gained from that experience.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's what it's done for me as well. It's uncomfortable writing about yourself. We love dealing with other people's problems, just not our own.
Yes, very much so.
um, but it was kind of therapeutic in a way, sort of looking back and saying, hey, I've come a long way. I've done well, and you no longer focus on that being something that held you back, but you now using this as a stepping stone to something greater.
Mhm.
um you know and I think that's the good part about it. Do you think you'd write again?
I think so. In fact, I've been talking to Linda about that. It's kind of like this was a great experience and so rewarding, and that yes, I think I'm going to do it again.
Abs Fantastic. And I do want to just mention to anyone who decides to buy, and you should, it's I think there's 20, is it 29 people in the book? Um,
It's
something,
20 something. Yeah.
20, it's 20 something stories of fearless entrepreneurs. And the reason we want you to go and buy the book is that 100% of the net proceeds of the sales of this book is going to be donated to Lemonade Day, which is a non-profit charity chosen by all the authors in the book. And the mission of Lemonade, the non-profit, is to prepare the youth for the entrepreneurial life. They do a lot of fun stuff. They're very proactive. They teach skills. They teach character education and entrepreneurship. So 100% of the proceeds is going to go to a good um, to do a very worthwhile cause. And that's a reason to support this book, apart from all the authors and their amazing stories in the book. um, that's another reason to go and get a copy of The Fearless Entrepreneurs. I've spoken to a couple of the other authors as well, and just amazingly heartwarming stories. And they're not long to read. They're 20 something stories. It's not a long read. You can read a chapter at a time. And you know what I also love, that what Linda's done in the book is that each chapter in the beginning will give you a brief bio of each author, and then their website. So if their story resonates with you, you can go to the website and reach them via their contact page. And I think that's just amazing, because very often, we don't have ways, especially with the pandemic, right? We're not able to go and do book readings at the moment, or in many cases you can't read at libraries or whatever. But these are ways that you can reach out to people. So connect with people. Alice has got her website in there. Reach out to her if her story about having a stroke, being a stroke survivor, and not just, I would like to call you not just a stroke survivor, but a thriver.
Thank you. I like that.
Because one can either choose a path of just surviving and just being, and living in the past and focusing on what you can't do, and then you just sort of every day just becomes a survival. But I don't think you're in that mode. I think you've become a thriver, in that you're not only wanting to help yourself, but also help others in your business, with the skills that you have. And I mean, I just think of you not having peripheral vision, for example. A lot of people can go nuts about not having that when they're trying to run a business. But just being able to sort of train yourself, that I'm okay with this. It's not the end of the world.
Yep.
Move along. I can still do this.
Right. So one quick thing I wanted to add in there is I've also had people reach out to me because they had a family member that had a stroke. So it's also, feel free to contact me through the website for that as well. And I've talked with people about how I got through vision issues and other things like that to help support them on their journey as well. And to your point, I had to give up some things. Like my hobbies were motorsports, rode a motorcycle, drag racing, fun stuff like that. But you don't do that with no peripheral vision on one side, because that's not a safety thing. So as I worked through that, it was again going back to that whole things could be worse. So I can't drag race again. I'll survive, right? But I can think. I can, do some other things that if I couldn't do that, it would be much worse. I don't have any physical paralysis anymore. That went away fairly quickly. So I always kind of go back to that whole, there's so many more things that could be worse as I get frustrated thinking of those pieces. And that helped me a lot through this journey, as well as being able to just start accepting the things that were just the way it is. I mean, you can't do anything about it. So.
Oh, absolutely. My favorite saying, Alice, is that, living in chronic pain, we had this conversation prior to the show. I often say to people, sometimes you have to take life one breath at a time. If that's all you can do, take life one breath at a time and just breathe through it, and just know that whatever it is at some point it's going to pass. Nothing stays exactly the same forever. And so sometimes know that it's okay to just breathe. You'll move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then just learning to be okay with where you are at and stop worrying so much about what you can't do. Because
Exactly.
you can't thrive if you focus on what you can no longer do. Then you survive. But it's not a good path.
Right.
It
I
doesn't
totally agree.
it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve you to live in the past, but it does serve you to look forward and live in the future and focus on what you can do. So
Yeah, so important.
what advice do you have for someone who's just recently had a stroke? What would you want to say to them?
First of all, of course, you can do it. You'll be able to get through it. And exactly what we just talked about, look on what you can still do, not what you can't do. Reach out to those resources around you. That was a challenge for me at first because I don't accept help well. I give help, but it was not easy for me to accept the help of people giving me rides around, having me walk around. But be okay with that because, again, the people that are offering that to you care about you and want to help you. And it's not a sign of weakness to need help and accept it. It's actually, as I learned, actually a kind of sign of strength to be able to accept help. So it'd be kind of my initial things.
I think a lot of people struggle with asking for help or accepting help, especially if you've been a strong-willed and an independent person. It's a lot harder to accept help. But it's again, accepting help is a stepping stone back to some sort of normalcy and independence again, because you'll only need it for a short while. You're not going to need that forever.
Well, and I was going to add one thing that helped me a lot as well is I had a colleague and friend named Chuck who was willing to drive me wherever I had to go. In fact, he drove me to the neighboring state to teach a class so I could still keep up what I was doing. And one of our mutual friends, I was resistant to that at first. I'm like, oh, we don't have to do that. And one of our mutual friends said, your friend Chuck wants to help you. Let him help you. It will help him to help you. So it's kind of that whole people reaching out to help you. Often it's something that they do as part of their being, and you're helping them fulfill that by accepting the help. So that helped me kind of turn my thought around a lot on that.
And isn't that just the problem that we often have? It's it's having a bad way of thinking that holds us back from moving forward. So if we can just switch that thinking to gratefulness, and that can propel us forward and not worry so much about what we can't do. Alice, thank you so much. I just want to encourage everyone, please go and get the book. You're not just supporting people who shared their stories, but you're going to be benefiting the non-profit Lemonade, who invests in our youth and young people by teaching them character building, life skills, and entrepreneurship skills. So please go out there and buy the book. If you're watching us over on Amazon Live, the Fearless Entrepreneurs is in the carousel, so you can just grab a copy of the book from there. And as we said, we know it goes for a good cause. Alice, any final words before we wrap up?
One, thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity. It's been fantastic to talk with you. And I think that you can do it is the theme I'd leave people with, is no matter what adversity crosses your path, you can get through it and do it.
Absolutely. Alice, thank you so much. A huge big thank you to our audience who have joined us today. And if you're catching this on the replay, then thank you for watching the replay. Alice, thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. And it's goodbye from us. You are watching Books with Bridgetti.